everyone. I'm Ravik Hunter, and this is The Greatest Adventure, presented by Legends on Paper. Last episode, our heroes Nihilus, Jolo, and Hildy, along with Commander Pritchard, and their hosts of civilian soldiers, are being pressed further and further into the center of the village of Remy, right up to the walls of the grand temple of Suna with its gold dome, where hovered the specter of Lord Dormont, commanding his undead horde to destroy all that remained living on his way to the grand city of Yorwick. And just as the episode ended, there were cries, bestial cries, from the edges of the village and the forest that surrounded it. Growls and howls and all kinds of terrible calls from vicious beasts that came bounding out of the forest to attack the undead. And two large birds were spiraling slowly down toward the top of the Golden Dome, where hovered Lord Dormont. These unexpected allies must be the Druids. And perhaps they'd come just in time. Or perhaps they'd come too late. We're about to find out. Rain is pouring down on the muddy streets of Remy, now slick with blood. Shrieks of pain and horror echo off the walls of the nearby structures. Growls and hisses answer them hungrily. The stench of death and rot permeates the senses that reeks with a raw, pungent stickiness like smoke from oil. Hildy watches as hundreds of undead converge on the spaces around the Temple of Suna, from every direction, compacting the remaining defenders against its walls. Above the fray, the specter of Lord Dormont hovers near the top of the temple's golden dome. He shifts quickly from place to place, shouting orders down to his ghoulish host. There's a loud thud as the doors of the temple slam shut. Hildy can hear great howls, roars, and growls behind the undead, drawing their attention to the rear. But there are still too many bearing down on her dwindling company of civilian soldiers. The shout draws her attention to the left. There, she can see Commander Pritchard rallying villagers separated from their units and battling his way toward her. It gives Hildy hope. And then a moment later, the flash of light and a high-pitched cry draws her gaze to see Dylan standing over a fallen Jolo, just before they are overwhelmed by the living. The messes ripping them to pieces. Hildy's hope begins to dwindle. Her eyes search the distance for the tall Atlantean Nihilus and his company of men and women. They are nowhere to be found. Her hope sinks further. Commander Pritchard is only a few paces away, and less than a dozen men follow him, and he seems on the verge of collapse. Then, without warning, Hildy is struck on the side of the head. He crumples to the ground. Suddenly, Commander Pritchard is standing over her defensively, along with the remaining civilians. With battle raging all around, everything seems quiet. She can see the dark clouds above, like shadows, crossing the sky, and the feel of cold, wet rain on her skin. There was also the glowing form of Lord Dormont, but his attention is now focused on a giant albatross transforming into a human figure as it lands on the golden dome of the temple next to the druid Erolthian. Lord Dormont shrieks at the druids in an unknown language, but the druids seem unfazed. And then dozens of vines and branches erupt from the ground, snatching Lord Dormont from the air and pulling him toward the ground. From a distance, there's the sound of a horn, followed by thundering hooves. A host of voices rise in a battle cry, calling out to Suna, the Temple Knights. Lily pulls herself up the side of the temple on shaky legs, just in time to see a wave of glimmering armor crash into the undead from the south. Abruptly, the ground shakes with violence, and she turns to stare at a massive monolith rising from the ground near Lord Dormont, who is still lying on his back in the crimson mud, struggling to free himself from the vines holding him fast. Yet the nearest undead continue their press forward, as the ones further back turn to face the bestial druids and the Temple Knights. Hildy strikes out and fells one of the terrible creatures with her sword, and then another. But there are too many to stop. She's hit hard and falls a second time, her vision blurred and her mind reeling. And then the commander is pushed back hard, and he falls over the top of Hildy. Her head slams against the temple wall, leaving a splat of blood on the white stone. Just before she loses consciousness, Hildy senses the departure of Jolo and Nihilus from the living, their souls passing through the veil. It seems like such an odd sensation, having no real belief in gods or the afterlife. But the sharp pang of loss that threatened to shatter her heart was a pain she had forgotten. If only to find it too familiar. Then all goes black. Hello again, everyone. We have recently made some internal changes here at Legends on Paper to bring you a better entertainment experience. But the story doesn't end here. Our next episode will continue the journey that began what seems like so long ago in Lionsgate, but with a few new faces and an updated studio. We may not be new to D&D, but we are new to streaming, and we appreciate all your patience, sticking with us as we learn our way forward. But we'll see you next week as we bring you episode 14, The Aftermath in Remy.